3, 2.
Welcome to another episode of Top Trending News with me, Krista Krall. We're here today to talk about the thing that's on everyone's mind, the tragic death of Schwanzi, his personal history, and what his life tells us about us and our times. With me today are Dr. Ruth Revel, social psychologist and author of Schwanzi and the Art of Fame. Dr. Micah Weinrich, economist and author of Schwanzi, America's latest Steve Jobs. Abigail Willingham, blogger and author of Schwanzi, the greatest moral degenerate of all time. And Nick DeFrancisco, blogger and author of Schwanzi, How America Will Pay for Unleashing Him on an Unsuspecting World. So, how does one go from being a complete nobody to achieving possibly the greatest cultural touchstone of the 21st century? Getting over 1 trillion hits when you Google his name.
Well, like I said in my book, he suffered greatly from being a typical white suburban teen. His Facebook profile lamented that due to an accident of fate, he wasn't born African-American, gay, or handicapped, and was therefore deprived of something to prove. He spent the rest of his days trying to compensate for that deficiency.
I interviewed thousands of teachers, parents, associates for my book. Not one of them thought he'd amount to anything. But the thing that they didn't see was a simmering intelligence, a need to spark imagination so that the hidden genius that lives in all of us can finally be unleashed.
Hogwash! It was hormones. That's what always turns a shy, adorable boy like my son was into a raving lunatic that drives you crazy. But instead of turning to sex, drugs, and rock and roll like a normal teenager, Seymour Talliston from Des Moines put vampire caps on his teeth, started calling himself Schwanzi, and the whole school was talking about him. And then when his video went viral, he was hooked on internet fame, which is more addictive than internet porn.
Right. Right. This kid is a perfect example of what happens when someone is not brought up properly. Or, barring that, they are introduced to a world that is just so permissive that it is incapable of locking up its reprobates before they have a chance to spread their moral degeneracy into society.
Which brings us directly to our next point. His rock video, I Love You with Both My Heart and My Head. How did it get over 2 billion views in the first week, and over half of those from people who don't even speak English?
Well, Krista, it's simple. Schwanzi had an extraordinary instinctual understanding of what social networks are capable of doing. And so he
It was because his head, his penis, was swinging back and forth in his pants to the beat of a song. And then when it got to the chorus, it popped out erect and started singing a duet with him in a higher pitch of voice.
Dr. Ruth is so right about being a social network genius. He wanted to be a rock star. He asked his fans, and lo and behold, that became one of the most brilliant innovations of our time. Thousands of fans came together. They started weaving the best parts of the best tunes. They started adding their own lyrics. They started working together on animations. They even start tweaking his voice by putting it through different synthesizer apps.
Which makes my point exactly. Okay, how can someone who doesn't sing, who doesn't play an instrument, who has never even written a song, be called a genius?
Well, he knew that millions of teens all around the world thought their lives sucked too. And so his genius was to allow them to share the world stage with him. And so he made it possible for them to put themselves in his video as band members, concert goers, you name it.
Yes, he made it possible for our daughters to appear as topless backup singers, hoping that their version of the video would go viral too.
Which isn't genius by any stretch of the imagination. It is moral depravity on a worldwide scale.
People, please, let's be civil.
But his fans didn't stop there. Art classes everywhere cranked out thousands of different album covers, concert posters, designs for t-shirts.
Yes, temporary tattoos so our daughters could show their friends that Schwanzi had autographed their boobs.
And dozens of those templates that our sons and daughters could use to show pics of them sleeping with Schwanzi.
Writing classes formed in every school, and hundreds and thousands of them were competing to come up with fake Schwanzi tweets, autobiographies, kiss and tell books, documentaries about his love life.
Yes, hundreds and thousands of students went on strike nationwide against their English teachers because those teachers wouldn't switch their class assignments to Schwanzi-themed projects.
Not to mention the millions of high school newspapers that turned into shopping grocery shopping tabloid trash rags. No, they were just talking about all these lurid stories about the movie stars that might have slept with Schwanzi.
So in the end, he ended up teaching hundreds of millions of teens all around the world the very skills they need to succeed in the new media era. Skills they weren't getting in schools.
He inspired hundreds of millions. They saw with their own eyes that they could achieve anything that they put their minds to. Ending poverty, ending wars and famine, even climate change, which they're working on next.
It was one freaking song, for crying out loud!
Some people have busted their asses their entire lives to just dazzle the world with their brilliance. And if I had known that all I had to do was whip out my junk, I'd have done it years ago!
People, please, this is a serious discussion on television and not in a bar.
I apologize for letting my emotions get out of hand.
Sorry.
Me too.
It's just that celebrities determine what is hip and cool today. Before, when hip was manufactured by professionals to the stars in Hollywood, it was harmless. Now any kid with internet access can manufacture it, and Schwanzi is a perfect example of what it is doing to society. And I, for one, sincerely apologize for caring too much about that.
The Founding Fathers said that an informed electorate was critical to democracy. And whether they knew it or not, that electorate had to get their news from TV. But now, with the internet, they have a choice. And they always will choose tabloid sensationalism. And I too apologize for giving a damn about what this is doing to the fabric of our society.
They said the pill, porn, pornography, rock and roll, and a black guy at the White House would be the end of civilization. But somehow, we all survived.
Although, it was a close call when it came to disco.
Oh, true.
Okay, moving on. Schwanzi did empower the youth of the world. Let's get into that, one at a time.
You're absolutely right, Krista. His influence wasn't just in music. He spawned hundreds of cottage industries worldwide. He knew there was no way of topping the popularity of a song, so he moved on to fashion. He posted photos of himself
Naked.
in many different typical fashion poses and asked his fans to use the app on his website to design clothes for him. He just knew that tens of thousands would not only add plug-in designs, but others, millions of others, would post mock-up designs that millions of others could tweak.
It was a new platform that sparked a fashion explosion. Innovations were popping up everywhere, from shoes, shirts, pants, hairstyles, earrings, even fluorescent tattoos.
Yes, and you forgot designer condoms and body-piercing jewelry for sexual parts.
All of a sudden, his fans started manufacturing these items in hundreds of millions of bedrooms worldwide.
Not only were they popping up in the streets everywhere, they were popping up in virtual catwalks and magazines. It was like Schwanzi's version of Vogue. Now, how can that level of creativity be a bad thing?
Because he asked them to design coats and jackets out of pubic hair, for God's sakes.
To save the animals.
And instead of knowing that it was some dumb joke, people actually did it. There was such a pube shortage in North America that people were selling it to rock stars for $3,500 a pound!
And at the height of his fame, that wonderful young man decided to dedicate his life to the victims of great tragedies with a surprise public appearance, his first ever, at the celebrity auction at Wrigley Field in Chicago for the victims of Hurricane Shaniqua.
Which got him killed.
And what followed, of course, is the subject of some controversy.
No, it's not!
Do you mind? Like I said in my book, Schwanzi knew that to become a legend he had to die young, leaving the masses longing for more. And since he was so brilliant at publicity...
Okay, all right. This wasn't some brilliant disappearing act, okay? The second he hit the field with his 2 liters of sperm to auction off, there was a stampede. And the mob tore off all his clothes for souvenirs and ripped him limb from limb.
And there is no way in hell that any teenager can produce that much sperm on that short notice.
If you believe that, why don't you believe all the other hundreds of stories that are out there?
Because there is a video that actually shows what happened. The blood, the guts, all of it. They got 250,000,000 views alone, for crying out loud.
And his penis sold for $2.3 million on eBay.
Like with so many other public figures, he probably got tired of being famous. He probably created this whole publicity stunt so that he could go and hide amongst the masses and walk amongst the rest of us. He's probably home right now watching this show, having a good laugh during this whole brouhaha we're having.
I've already read online that there are sightings in Bolivia, Tahiti, Dubai, and a dozen more.
Like I say in my book, if you'd all just go to my website, sign the petition, together, we can get the government to license fame so that those who really deserve it, the musicians, the artists, the scientists, the writers, the ones who care about our great country, they will be the ones who get it.
That from a woman who's only sold 800 copies of her ebook, while her daughter's book on the dyeing and weaving of pubic hair has sold millions.
Then join me at my 10 million man march on Washington, where we will pressure Congress to tax rock stars and derivatives traders and so-called pop culture doctorates so they will pay the debt they owe for ruining our culture.
This coming from the person who only sold 37 copies of his book until he posted 40 pages of explicit XXX photos on the front cover.
Okay, you know what?
I've had just about enough of you people.
Join me tomorrow.
Okay.
And tomorrow on Top Trending News, we have the most talked about band in the scene. A band that was unable to get any attention until they changed their name to the American Taliban and came out with their song, If She's Not a Virgin, She's a Whore Who Should Be Stoned.
Look, whether we want to admit it or not, we'd all love to be a household name and have billions of fans without going through hell over 20 or 30 years trying to be an expert in some difficult field that few will ever be a huge success in. But we have to face the facts that will never happen to us. Enormous fame is always reserved for the most talentless and undeserving members of the human race. Having said that, there is a sneaky way of getting in on the action. Due to some genetic defect in the human mind, billions of people just can't help being obsessed by any kind of rumor that's floating around on social media about some famous person, like Swansea. So, what's the latest you've heard about Swansea? Better yet, what scandalous thing did you do with him when you just happened to run into him at where? Just think of all the likes and followers you'll get on social media, the juicier you get with your details. Remember, the comment section is PG-13, so when you use certain words, substitute asterisks, pound signs, and percent symbols for various letters. Okay?